Hi everyone, I'm David Fisher, and this is Presidential Chronicles, the series of books and videos on American history as seen through the lens of the presidents of the United States. This episode is from the life of Franklin Pierce, and the focus is coming into his own. The year is 1830, and Pierce's father, Benjamin, is just stepping down after a couple of terms as the governor of New Hampshire. Well, he's coming down. Franklin Pierce is on the rise. He's becoming a solid legislator in his own right. In fact, he was well recognized as a leader even at the tender age of 26. His fellow Democrats at that point elevated him to be the Speaker of that body, the youngest person ever to hold the position, something that wasn't lost on him. He told them, my heart pays the tribute of lively gratitude for the kind expression, my youth and inexperience should perhaps admonish me to avoid the high responsibility of the station to which I have been called by your favorable regard. Gentlemen, I shall need much of your charity. A young leader with a touch of humility. Now, the politics of Franklin Pierce, straight down the line, Jacksonian Democrat. He opposed federally funded internal improvements, opposed high protective tariffs, opposed banks. In fact, in his own state of New Hampshire, a charter came forward for a new bank in the town of Somersworth. He rejected it. Why? They had enough banks in New Hampshire already. And one of the perks of being the Speaker in New Hampshire's assembly is you got to be the colonel in the New Hampshire Militia. And this was something that thrilled Franklin Pierce. He wanted military glory just like his father had from the Revolutionary War. So excited about his first opportunity to muster with his men. He said, I never enjoyed myself more highly on any occasion. The idea that I was soon to make a devil of a display in chapeau buffs and military boots has reigned so perfectly triumphant in my cranium that any other subject during the last 10 days was almost certain to plead in vain for consideration. And he was again on the rise in a variety of levels, including in the political ranks. At this time, the state of New Hampshire had 5 representatives in the House of Representatives, and they were elected on a statewide basis. And this was a period where the Democrats were on the rise. Franklin Pierce's name was in the mix, and sure enough, early 1830s, he is elected to his first term in the House of Representatives. Also now, comfortable in his own standing in his both personal life and his professional life, decides to pop the question to Jane Appleton, who he's known now for several years. They had met at Amherst when he was going to law school, and they decided to get married November 19, 1834. This was an odd couple. They were very, very different. Franklin Pierce was athletic. He loved the outdoors, was a social creature, liked lively parties accentuated by spirits. He sought the spotlight and the opportunity to lead. Jane Pierce, the opposite. She abhorred politics, detested large social gatherings, was often physically frail and infirm, pious, anti-alcohol. When he was around her, he was very different, almost a muted version of himself. He would stop drinking, stop going out. But when she was not around, kind of a different story. For example, when he was reelected, she stayed home because they were expecting their first child, and he kind of got back to his own ways, seen out in the town quite a bit with Daniel Webster, his friend at the time, who was from Massachusetts, originally though from New Hampshire. They hit it off, and they had plenty of time out in the evenings while Jane was back home. 1836, the little boy was born. They named him after the father, Franklin as well, but the young boy died just 3 days into his life, causing grief for both parents. Franklin Pierce said, he who has lived 30 years in this world of ours, seen its vanity, its inanity, and felt its miseries, ought not to repine at or weep over the demise of an infant. But alas, what has our experience or what has our philosophy to do with the feelings of a father? Tough times for Franklin Pierce, even tougher for Jane Pierce. She was incredibly distraught, had to stay at home with her parents and family in Amherst for an extended period to recover from her grief. Well, Franklin Pierce, in the meantime, continued in Congress in lockstep with the Andrew Jackson policies and his administration, also took his first position on the always controversial topic of slavery. His answer on slavery, straight to the Constitution, which sanctioned the practice, and he believed these increasingly sort of radical elements in the North, not too widespread so far, but very vocal, the abolitionists. This was only going to cause problems. According to Pierce, one thing must be perfectly apparent to every intelligent man. This abolition movement must be crushed or there is an end to the Union. In fact, Pierce in Congress supported the move from his Southern colleagues to adopt the gag rule, to take any petitions coming in from constituents that would traditionally be read to the House or on the Senate side as well, and they would now be put aside, not read, not put into the record, not considered. That was the suggestion from the South. Franklin Pierce was among those who voted in favor of the gag rule. It went into effect, stayed that way for 8 years. He started earning a nickname. His alignment with Southern principles caused folks to call him a Doughface. This was a Northern sympathizer to the Southern cause, was this term. Now, he decried the label, but his actions really did fit much of that definition of what a Doughface was implied to be. Now, his own political prospects heightened even further the following year, 1837, when the senator from New Hampshire, Isaac Hill, decided to step down, opened up a seat, and Franklin Pierce was selected to fill it. He's only 32 years old, barely past the legal age per the Constitution to be in the United States Senate. He was the youngest in that body at the time, and it was a tough time for the country. 1837, Martin Van Buren takes over in the presidency. Within a couple of months, there's an economic panic. And a lot of blame going around. A lot of people were blaming the policies of the Democrats and Jackson and Van Buren. The Democrats were mostly blaming the bankers, inappropriate speculation, improper behavior, and Franklin Pierce continued to support the Van Buren administration, which adhered to those Democratic policies that he inherited from President Jackson. He stuck with those along with the administration, despite the suffering that continued throughout the term of Martin Van Buren for the country. His primary role in the Senate was on the Committee on Military Pensions. Now, he spent a lot of time on this. He took it very seriously, had reverence for the Revolutionary War heroes like his father, but he really struggled with this idea that applications for pensions were still rolling in some 50 plus years after the Battle of Yorktown. He blamed his unscrupulous agents who were hovering around the country looking for elderly gentlemen to make these applications so they could get their 25% cut of on a fee. He faulted the entire system. Pierce said the pension system of the country, the worst on the face of the earth. He struggled through it. He rejected many of the applications coming in, but he still supported defense. In fact, he thought the country should allocate more funds for the defense of the nation. When Congress was out of session, went back home up to Hillsborough in New Hampshire, they decided to move to the bigger city, Concord. Railroad was coming. There's about 5,000 residents. This is where the action was. He formed a new law partnership with Asa Fowler. Fowler would watch after the business when Pierce is in Washington, D.C. as a senator. When he's back in town, they would work together. Circle of life kicked in for Franklin Pierce, 1838. His mother passed away. The two of them never appeared to be very close. In fact, he skipped her funeral, stayed in Washington performing his senatorial duties, but very different the following year when his father passed away. This was his hero. This was his role model. Pierce said of his father at the time of his death, "He has been a truly extraordinary man, and where his age and character of his disease are considered, it appears to me that his great strength of character was never more conspicuous than within the last 2 years." Benjamin Pierce was very much everything that Franklin Pierce wanted to be. Again, circle of life. The parents did pass, but a couple of new children came into the Pierce family, a couple of boys. They named the first Frank, born in 1839. A couple of years later, Benjamin, they called Benny. Benjamin came around in 1841. Now, while Pierce was in Washington, Jane was up north with her family. She wanted him home. She was tired of this whole political life. She never liked it in the first place. She said, "Oh, how I wish he was out of political life. How much better it would be for him on every account." She kept after him and influenced him, but there were other reasons why he eventually decided to resign from the United States Senate. First of all, things weren't looking good for the Democrats, and so he really figured that the Democrats were going to lose the majority in the Senate, and he didn't have much interest in being a part of the minority party without a lot of power and influence in that body. Plus, there's the rotation in office principle that was pretty common in New Hampshire, so the odds are he was going to be out in 1843 anyway, not subject to a renomination to give someone else a try. So he did decide to resign February 28, 1842, telling his colleagues that "I feel the need of the quiet, which can only be enjoyed by the private citizen, and the necessity of attending to my personal affairs and professional pursuits." Franklin Pierce would not hold office again for another decade, but he was never very far from politics, and those are stories for another day. That is Franklin Pierce and coming into his own from the life of Franklin Pierce. For more Presidential Chronicles, check out my books on Amazon.com, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Until next time, I'm David Fisher, and this is Presidential Chronicles.